Snow hammered the old mountain road like shattered glass falling from the sky, and 27-year-old Evan McCall felt every flake against his face as he trudged through the drifts with a sack of firewood slung over his shoulder, muttering about how winter had shown up early this year and how old man Hargrave, his reclusive neighbor, hadn't answered anyone's knocks for 2 days straight, something that kept bothering Evan the entire morning until his conscience snapped and he forced himself out the door to check on him. But halfway to the cabin, through the swirling storm, he suddenly froze in place because there, half buried beside the sagging fence, was what looked like a person, small, curled, unmoving, and when Evan dropped the firewood and ran, his boots sinking deep into the icy powder, he saw her, a young woman wrapped in a torn shawl, trembling violently, her lips painfully blue, eyes fluttering like someone losing a battle against sleep. And Evan's heart slammed into his ribs, because he had never seen someone so close to dying before. He knelt beside her, shouting to be heard above the roaring wind, asking if she could hear him, and her eyelids cracked open just enough for him to catch a glimpse of warm brown irises that had once carried hope but now held nothing except fear and exhaustion. And she whispered a single broken word, "Please," before slipping unconscious. Acting on pure instinct, Evan scooped her into his arms, shocked by how light she was, as if she'd been starving for days. And as he fought his way back through the thickening storm toward his cabin, he couldn't stop replaying the little details. Her dress was foreign and outdated, like something from a rural eastern wedding market. Her fingers were wrapped around a crumpled envelope, and there were bruises on her wrists as if she'd been dragged or restrained. But he forced himself not to jump to conclusions and focused only on keeping her alive. As he burst through his cabin door, laying her gently near the fire, rubbing her cold hands, checking her breathing, covering her with blankets. When she finally gasped awake, coughing, eyes wide with terror, she tried to sit up and failed, then mumbled words in a thick accent, saying something about Mr. Hargrave, bride and snow, and Evan's stomach twisted. Because the puzzle pieces suddenly clicked. The old man had frequently received thick envelopes in the mail these past 2 months, and the local postal worker had joked about him ordering himself a wife, but no one had taken it seriously. Evan, now shaken to his core, handed her water and tried to speak gently, asking who she was, what had happened, but she flinched at every movement until she realized he wasn't going to hit her or drag her away. Slowly, trembling, she revealed her name, Anya, 23, from a remote town overseas, promised as a mail-order bride to Mr. Hargrave, who had paid for her travel, papers, and arrival. But when she reached his doorstep last night, she found him collapsed inside, already unconscious, maybe already dying, and when she tried to call for help, she slipped on the icy porch, fell into the drifting snow, and spent the night outside because she was too weak to stand. Evan felt a cold ripple of dread because Hargrave had nobody, no family, no friends, no one to care if he lived or died, and if Anya had not survived long enough for Evan to find her, she would have frozen only a few yards away from a man who would never have been able to save her anyway. Determined to do something, Evan pulled on his coat and told Anya to stay near the fire, promising he'd be back shortly, then rushed to Hargrave's cabin, where he found the door half open, the interior freezing, and the old man lying on the floor, barely breathing, his face white as paper, with a surge of adrenaline he didn't know he possessed. Evan dragged the frail old man to the couch, threw blankets over him, radioed the rescue station, and waited, pacing anxiously between two people he barely knew but felt suddenly responsible for. When the medics arrived, they loaded Hargrave onto the stretcher and asked who the girl in Evan's cabin was, but Evan shielded her, saying she was safe and would stay with him until things were figured out. And when the rescuers left, the storm still raging, Evan returned to his cabin to find Anya staring at the fire with tears slipping silently down her cheeks, whispering that she had come all this way to marry a man she'd never met, only to watch him die and be abandoned in a foreign land. And Evan, not usually a man of many words, felt something tighten inside him as he knelt next to her and said softly, "You're not abandoned. Not anymore. You're safe here. I promise." And though she didn't smile, her breathing finally steadied, and for the first time since he'd found her in the snow, she allowed herself to believe she might live through the night, and that this stranger who had lifted her from death's edge might be the only person in the world left who cared whether she lived at all. Morning seeped into the mountains like pale gold, poured through cracked clouds, and Evan woke with a start to the soft sound of a kettle whistling, only to find Anya already up, wrapped in his oversized flannel shirt, quietly arranging his cluttered kitchen as if she were afraid to disturb anything, yet unable to sit still. And the sight filled him with a strange warmth he didn't want to analyze. She thanked him with a shy nod, though she still looked lost, like someone who had fallen into a life she couldn't understand. And Evan gently reassured her, explaining that Hargrave had survived the night and been taken to the county hospital. But before he could finish, his phone rang, and the nurse's somber tone sent a chill through him. Hargrave hadn't made it. He died shortly after arriving, likely from a stroke that had begun the previous evening. Evan turned, unsure how to tell Anya, but she seemed to understand instantly, into the chair and clutching the shawl around her shoulders, whispering that she had traveled across oceans to become a wife, only to end up widowed before she'd even met her husband properly. Yet Evan, feeling her despair like a punch to his own chest, reminded her she was not alone and would not be sent back unless she wished to go. And after a long silence, she told him something she hadn't admitted before, that back home she had no family left, no money, no future, and Hargrave had been her only chance for survival. So now she didn't know where she belonged. Deeply moved, Evan promised to help her figure out her future one step at a time. And as days passed, they formed a quiet, unexpected companionship, Anya helping around the cabin, learning to cook with American ingredients, laughing shyly at Evan's awkward jokes, and Evan teaching her how to chop wood, repair fences, and navigate the snowy trails, while secretly marveling at her resilience, her gentleness, and the way she brought life into a home that had always felt empty since his parents died years earlier.